When you think of characters in Marvel Comics that get around, you typically think Tony Stark, She-Hulk, or like anybody in the X-Men. But because I decided that for some reason I was going to become the definitive Marvel sexpert and catalog every hookup in Marvel history, I've learned that some characters have surprisingly robust love lives. Take Aunt May for example, which I have a video all about. Well, despite being a robot man, the Vision is another one of these characters that you wouldn't expect to get around, but does a whole heck of a lot. So let's put my oddly specific knowledge to the test and take a look at his huge love life. But before we jump into that, I want to give a big thank you to the company that has consistently decided to fund my weird research into superhero romance, Manscaped. Now, I have been a huge fan of Manscaped products for a long time, and they recently just released the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer. This thing is insanely well made, with its new wireless charger and it being waterproof for maximum convenience. The 4.0 also has a travel lock feature, so it doesn't accidentally turn on when it's inside of a bag. Because, let me tell you, it's extremely awkward when you're at a girl's house and the sound of a vibrating object is coming out of your backpack. Not that I would know from personal experience or anything. So do yourself, and more importantly anyone that you're sharing a bed with, a favor by going to manscaped.com and using the code COMICD at checkout for 20% off your order and free shipping. Manscaped is legitimately one of the best and nicest companies that I've ever worked with on the channel, and I cannot praise them enough. But anyway, back to the video. So let's start off with the first and most well-known step in Vision's journey as a love machine, the Scarlet Witch. When Wanda and Pietro rejoined the Avengers after they quit for a little bit to be bad guys with Magneto, again, they were introduced to the Vision, who, in their absence, had become a valuable member of the team. At first, Wanda didn't have much of an opinion on Vision, kind of like everybody else when they first meet him, since he's kind of like that weird stoic dude that just hangs out in the corner of the room at parties. But Quicksilver was straight up a robo-racist and hated him. Over time, Wanda's feeling for Vision slowly built up, and they developed a will-they-won't-they relationship that made up for the main sexual tension of the book. Despite Quicksilver's protesting, Wanda and Vision hit it off, fell in love, and were a solid couple for a few years. But then a new woman walked into Vision's life and put this new relationship to the test.
I am Mantis.
Okay, so longtime viewers of the channel know that I seriously hate the comic book version of Mantis with a burning passion. Mostly because she's the writer's pet of her creator, Steve Englehart, who made it his mission to force her into as many books as possible, even going so far as to take her from Marvel and shove her into books that he wrote at other companies like DC Comics. But he renamed her so that it was technically legal, even though those aliases have since been made canon to Marvel itself, because comics. But my hatred for Mantis started from her first ever appearance, where she single-handedly took down Thor and Captain America, kissed all the dudes on the Avengers, and then convinced them to let both her and her alcoholic ex-supervillain boyfriend join the team. Mantis was a straight-up homewrecker, explicitly flirting with Vision, and even staring him down while she was making out with her boyfriend. Obviously, this made Wanda pretty jealous. See, Englehart never liked the WandaVision pairing since it was established before he took over writing the Avengers book, and he just straight up didn't know where to go with it. Part of the inspiration for creating Mantis in the first place was for Vision to cheat on Scarlet Witch with her, but Englehart decided that he didn't actually want to do Wanda dirty like that. So, the solution? Have Vision propose to Wanda and then marry her in the same issue and at the same time as the wedding of Mantis and an alien plant dude that had merged with her boyfriend's dead body, because comics. Anyway, Wanda and Vision had a pretty happy marriage. They even quit the Avengers in order to go live a normal life out in the suburbs, where, thanks to Wanda's magic, they were able to give birth to the twins, Thomas and William. Turns out, though, that those kids weren't real and they were actually fragments of the devil himself. It's a really complicated bit of nonsense, and if you want to know more about it, I actually have an entire video dedicated to breaking it down. Around this time, Vision was also destroyed and rebuilt into this solid white form. He had no emotions or memory of his time with his wife, which naturally put a damper on the relationship. If you want more information on the white body, then I actually have a dedicated video breaking down that as well. So after the back-to-back trauma of finding out that her kids were demons, losing them, her husband getting destroyed, but then coming back to life without any of the emotions or love for her, Wanda justifiably had a mental breakdown and became a supervillain once again. So yeah, she and the Vision were done for good. But fun fact, the two of them never technically got divorced. The marriage was just for all intents and purposes annulled when the Vision's body was destroyed. From here, the Vision's entire life, romantic or otherwise, becomes extremely complicated, and that is all thanks to one man, Avengers writer Bob Harras. So Bob here seems to have been really obsessed with the Vision, especially his romantic life. Not that I'm one to talk though, considering that I'm the one making this entire video. First off, we have Vision seeking out a scientist named Miles Lipton to help him navigate living life without emotions in this new white body. The end result was Miles implanting Vision with the brainwaves of his dead son, Alex. Well, Alex was a dude that lived an entire life of his own, which included his widow, Laura. Normally this wouldn't be all that relevant to this video, but when Miles was revealed to have been diagnosed with cancer, Laura came to the Avengers mansion to inform Vision, but was also low-key hoping that some trace of her late husband was alive within him. After returning to Miles' lab, they tried to bring out Alex's memories and personality so that he could have one last goodbye with his son. While the process didn't work, Vision still pretended to be Alex to allow Miles to pass in peace. Afterwards, he went up to Laura and still pretended to be Alex so that she could have the catharsis of having a last goodbye and a last kiss with her husband, following which Vision said that the memory program of Alex was gone for good mid-kiss. Fellow Avenger Crystal was along for the ride and asked Vision if he was faking it the whole time, to which he didn't respond, but a single tear fell from his face, implying that on some level, it wasn't an act. The reason Crystal cared so much was because it was heavily implied that she had feelings for the Vision as well, which was extremely complicated because at that time, pretty much everybody on the Avengers had crushes on at least 1 to 3 other members of the team. Crystal's crush was seemingly reciprocated by Vision once Alex's brainwaves were added to the mix, but at that point it was too little too late since Crystal's heart was already set on another member of the Avengers, the Black Knight. Wanting to take advantage of Crystal's moving on was another Bob Harras original, Deathcry. God, how do I even begin to describe this absolute train wreck of a character? Well, Marvel writer Fred Van Lent probably said it best, quote, "To me, her real name should have been the 90s, because she's the classic stereotypical bad girl with cleavage and a shitty attitude." As soon as Deathcry showed up in Harris's Avengers book, she started flirting with the Vision hardcore, talking all about the pleasure robots on her planet, and following it up with a non-consensual kiss. Oh, and I guess I forgot to mention that Deathcry is a teenager by her race's standards. Well, I guess that knowing that she's a kid makes a lot of sense considering that every teenager that I've ever met has tried to be super edgy in an attempt to look more adult. This aspect was actually played with later on in the series, but man, then they just started to depict her as super childish and playing with dolls, all while keeping the sexualization going. Big yikes. Now, I'm sure you've noticed that Vision's body has stopped being solid white for the past few minutes. Well, that happened when an evil group of Avengers from an alternate universe called the Gatherers came around. In order to better infiltrate the Avengers, the Gatherers kidnapped Vision and swapped his body with Anti-Vision, their own alternate universe doppelganger of the normal Vision. The Gatherers were eventually defeated, but 2 of their members stuck around, Anti-Vision and Jocasta. For those that aren't aware, Jocasta is a robot created by Ultron with the brainwaves of his creator's wife in order to be his bride. But much like Vision, Jocasta stuck around and joined the Avengers. This golden version of her is an alternate universe doppelganger that was a part of the Gatherers. Okay, so I know that was a whole lot, so let me just quickly recap in simple terms. Golden Jocasta is a robot created by Ultron from another universe. Okay, we good? Good, because that is as easy as I can make that. Well, Anti-Vision wanted his old body back, so he infected Golden Jocasta and Vision with a virus that made them experience human-like emotions, prompting the 2 of them to get together and become 1930s style detectives. Alright, so setting aside how weird all of that is, keep in mind that these 2 are practically siblings. Like, Ultron and all of his creations frequently use phrases with each other like father and son. But even though this is the extremely odd and complicated case of making out with your alternate universe sister slash sort of stepmom with the brainwaves of your grandma all while you're inside the body of a different version of yourself from a completely different alternate universe, that's still your sister, and that is still pretty fucking weird. This all happens in the Vision solo series, which was written by Bob Harras, and more or less every supporting character was somebody that wanted to get with Vision. Crystal, Deathcry, Laura Lipton, Golden Jocasta, they're all here. It's like a harem anime, but instead of the main character being a lovable dumbass, it's a synthetic superhero that's losing his mind and thinks that he's a hard-boiled private eye. 90s comics are just really weird, man. Anyway, at the end of the miniseries, Vision returns back to normal and Golden Jocasta leaves comics altogether, never to be seen again, which is probably a good thing. For a good while, Vision really didn't have a love interest, since when he got all of his emotions back in order, he was super hung up over his ex-wife, Wanda, especially since Simon Williams, aka Wonder Man, came back to life and started a relationship with her. As many of you guys might recall, when the Vision was first created, he was given Wonder Man's brainwaves. So when Wanda was now dating Simon, Vision got extremely jealous. Seeing himself as a pale imitation of the real deal, and unable to deal with these emotions, Vision ran off. In order to work through his personal baggage, Vision went off to Chicago, where he tried to hunt down the villainous Grim Reaper, spending a lot of his time hanging out at a bar, getting to know people in order to try to find information about the Reaper's whereabouts. Vision became good friends with all of the regulars, including a woman named Darby Shervat. But even though he vanished from the city just as she tried to ask him out, it's clear from Vision's dreams that he was similarly into her. A good amount of time later, Vision actually bumped into Darby once again, and she made it clear that the offer to go out was still on the table, but he never took her up on it. A good reason for that is because as soon as he apprehended the Grim Reaper, Vision rejoined the Avengers and then immediately pulls an Alpha Chad move by asking out their fellow teammate Carol Danvers right in front of Wanda, making sure to drop that he has always been attracted to strong women. Total dick move, but Wanda and Carol didn't seem to mind, so I guess it's okay. Vision and Carol ended up only going on one date, which was cut short by an emergency call from the Avengers. But the two of them didn't pursue things afterwards, making room for everyone's favorite self-important character to come back into the picture, Mantis. When Steve Englehart returned to Marvel Comics, of course he decided to shove Mantis into the forefront of everything with the Celestial Quest storyline. This was an extremely horny book that kicked off with Vision and Mantis finally getting together and hooking up in the Avengers spaceship while Wanda was still on board. However, the relationship didn't last too long, with Mantis going off to do her grandiose space shit, but it also didn't matter too much because a couple of years later, Vision was ripped in half by She-Hulk, who was being mind-controlled. That all brings us to this guy, Iron Lad. He's a young version of a villain named Kang who came to the past in hopes of not turning into his evil older self. Iron Lad was a founding member of the Young Avengers and dated his teammate Cassie Lang, the superhero daughter of Scott Lang, the second Ant-Man. Well, Iron Lad's futuristic armor ended up fusing with Vision's remains, which morphed into this guy, Young Vision. Since Iron Lad's armor had some of his consciousness, Young Vision was like a fusion between the two, including his feelings for Cassie. When Iron Lad killed his evil older self, the time stream was in total disarray, which could only be stopped if he returned home, so he did. But as soon as Iron Lad was out of the picture, Young Vision swooped in on his girl and they dated. Pretty weird that Scott's friend and enemy fused into one guy that's dating his teenage daughter, but yeah, that's his whole problem to work through. Later on though, Iron Lad was able to figure out how to travel through time without messing with reality, so he came back to the past and was justifiably confused about his old armor hooking up with his ex-girlfriend. Not that it would matter for too long, because like 2 minutes after Iron Lad came back, Cassie was killed by Dr. Doom. Things were a little tense because of that, which combined with Iron Lad's intense jealousy caused him to kill Young Vision. But of course Vision was rebuilt, and he later went to another planet where he found a female synthezoid that was modeled after him. This is Eve, and she has an obsession with Vision. Like, they had never even met yet, and Eve was sitting around with pictures that she made of the two of them, and kids that didn't exist. Now, normally this would be a huge red flag, but much like me, Vision pretended not to notice and dove in headfirst anyway. Yeah, despite having just met, Vision proclaimed that Eve was his soulmate and completed him, so naturally the two of them started getting intimate almost immediately. Instead of it being the more biological way that Vision has totally performed in the past, Vision and Eve instead had this weird back-to-back crossing of wires. Either way, this method still led to procreation, and I mean a lot of procreation. But here's the thing. Eve's creator is a madman called the High Evolutionary, and there is zero doubt that these kids would get wrapped up in his schemes, and they wouldn't be safe on this planet. So Vision was like, well, how about we raise them on Earth? Eve took one look at the total shit show that is humanity and noped the hell out of there, opting to instead load all these kids into a spaceship and find a new planet. Vision stayed behind to fight the High Evolutionary with the rest of his team, and even though Eve did send some emails to let him know that they found a new planet and he should come visit, Vision pretty much ignored them entirely, and they were never mentioned again. So clearly all these relationships either didn't work out or were nipped in the bud before they could even start. But clearly he was onto something with the whole dating another synthezoid thing. So Vision decided to make his own wife. Using the brainwaves of his ex-wife Wanda, Vision created Virginia, and the two of them fused their brainwaves together to create their twin kids, Viv and Ven. With Vision's track record of his first two kids being demons and then the next 30 being abandoned in space, you know, what could possibly go wrong? Well, over the course of the miniseries, Virginia did kill a few people in the name of protecting her family before ultimately killing herself. And there is a lot more that I could say about Virginia and honestly this book as a whole, but for one, it's so good that I don't want to spoil it any more than I already have, and two, I already have a dedicated video all about it. But yeah, after looking way too far into this, these are all the love interests for Vision that I could find, and hopefully you found this entertaining. And hey, maybe you would like one of the many other videos that I recommended earlier, like this one on the 2015 Vision series, because it was pretty good, and I think you would enjoy it. I know these videos about superhero love lives are really weird, but honestly, I have a lot of fun making them, and I hope you guys enjoy watching them as well. So if you like this, then maybe consider subscribing, or even watching another one. But thank you guys very much for watching. Hopefully you learned at least a little something new, and maybe I'll see you next time.